Let's do a little meditation, motivation, and as usual, try to settle your mind first of all on the easily found object of your respiration. Withdrawing your attention away from the other senses and as stimuli and other thoughts as distractions. See if you can concentrate, be mindful just of the respiration, as though nothing else existed. You're only aware of that. Then bring your attention further inside to your hermitage of your heart chakra. And just watch the nature of the mind, the clear light nature, like a vast crystal spaciousness, not obstructing like glass or physical crystal, pristine, reflective, capable of being the media within which all of our thoughts arise, all of our emotions. Take your attention away from the objective thoughts and images and refocus instead on the subjective nature of the mind, the clear light nature. Let go of thoughts again and again. If you notice attraction or irritation, other delusions, other emotions, try to see through them, don't follow them. Let them dissipate in the spaciousness of your mind. Without fear, let go of everything. Let go of even your sense of ego. Perhaps recognizing that there is some tension there, holding on to it, grasping to it. And like a real dakini, soar in the space of your consciousness. Recalling the life that we have of leisure and endowment, which is transitory, incredibly potent and potential to bring about good, but changing in every moment. The possibility to do what we're doing now won't last long, even in this lifetime. Other distractions, let alone after this life. With a sense of concern for our own welfare and the welfare of all living beings, having recognized previously the value of the Dharma as a refuge, the omniscient mind that taught that and the Sangha that puts it into practice, helps us to take the medicine of the Dharma. With a sense of Mahayana refuge, seeking the guidance of the Mahayana teachings to protect all living beings through our practice of the Bodhisattva path. Remembering our aim in learning about this text, trying to develop the two types of bodhicitta: conventional awakening mind, especially through equalizing and exchanging oneself with others, recognizing the defects of the self-cherishing thought, and having developed that altruistic intention, the ultimate bodhicitta that resides within the mind of the bodhisattva, the realization of emptiness that eradicates the root of all the problems, the self-grasping ignorance that's given rise to self-cherishing. All the illusory appearances, due to our karma, have no ultimate reality, have no solidity. Like an onion that you try to peel, going to find the essence, going deeper and deeper. There's nothing at the end, like a plantain tree. no solidity, no reality. Yet they appear and function to give rise to suffering or relief within cyclic existence. Recognizing that living beings are not our enemies, that they are the field of our merit equal to the Buddhas, that it's independence upon them that we attain enlightenment, just equally with the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Gurus. I think I'm going to participate tonight for their sake, to become myself less harmful, more skillful, actually beneficial, to develop real affection for others and compassion, to achieve not only bodhicitta, realization of emptiness, but all of the bodhisattva practices, to achieve enlightenment for the welfare of all living beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. How's everyone? Questions? No questions? Okay. Surprisingly, we may finish this text. We have one more class after today, right? Besides the practice day. So, let's see. Let me ask a question here. Craig? No. He's not going to let me. Huh? Okay. He wasn't going to let me ask a question unless I got his name right. No, not Craig. Not Fred. Carl. What is conventional bodhicitta?
Conventional bodhicitta is the situation where...
Conventional bodhicitta is a situation, in other words.
Well, let me continue.
Okay.
Where the practitioner has the intention of obtaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings.
So, bodhicitta is a situation. What does a situation mean? You mean like a period of time or particular?
No.
No. Mm-hmm.
Situation. Maybe that's not a good word.
Well, good situation is a good word.
Maybe it doesn't fit what I want to say.
Okay. Bodhicitta. What does citta mean? What is that? Phantom whispering mind. Okay. So citta means mind.
Mind. Bodhi means enlightened.
Enlightened mind?
Yes.
Changchub Sempa is bodhisattva jangshub sem bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, I think, kind of the etymology of the word means a mind which is intending to attain enlightenment. So it doesn't necessarily mean a mind that's already awakened. An awakened mind, maybe the mind that's wishing to be awakened or to be enlightened. Right?
So it's just intention?
So is it just intention? Is bodhicitta just an intention? We talked about this before, right? I'm not going to get much more out of Carl. I can see he's going to extricate. Dan, how about you? We hit the dakas today. Is bodhicitta an intention? That means it would be a mental factor, right?
Mind that aspires to wisdom.
Aspires to wisdom
By exchange of self and others.
by exchange of self.
That's the conventional
Mhm.
bodhicitta. Exchange of self and others.
No, it's not. That's not. That's one of the methods we talked about. There are two. Excuse me. There are two main methods to develop bodhicitta, even if we don't know what it is yet. The 7 methods of cause and effect. Remember, by recalling all living beings have been your mother, and recalling their kindness, developing the intention to repay their kindness, and as a basis, on the basis of those 3, developing what's called heartwarming love, affectionate love that sees everyone with an affectionate, attractive sense, rather than feeling unpleasant toward them. And on the basis of that, developing real compassion, what we call great compassion. And as a result of that, developing the exceptional wish, which Tibetans call laksam, special intention. and as a result of that 6th cause, developing the bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta. That's through the methodology that is suitable for those of lesser faculties, not sharp faculties, dull faculties, it says in the sutras, or what are called followers of faith, particularly adapted to those, except everyone should practice. The method you're talking about, exchanging self and others, is for those of sharp faculties who have a chance, who have the ability, due to especially the faculty of wisdom, to realize emptiness. And they develop a special affectionate love by recognizing living beings have been kind, not only as mother, but even as strangers and enemies. A very, very extensive way of developing affectionate love. And on the basis of that, seeing and developing love and compassion, they see the defects of the self-cherishing thought, especially meditate on that through the understanding of wisdom, understanding that there is no self, and so there is no self to protect and cherish the way that our mind has done up till now. They see the defects of it, the possibility of exchanging. They see the advantages of exchanging with our attitude, cherishing others rather than cherishing ourselves. And they actually engage in various practices like tonglen, the giving and taking and so forth, to develop bodhicitta. So the different methods to develop bodhicitta. But at the end, what is bodhicitta? Bodhicitta is a mind. It's a special primary mind, primary consciousness. It's not a mental factor, but it is accompanied by a mental factor, which is the intention to achieve enlightenment for the welfare of all living beings. The intention to achieve enlightenment, and it's said to have been preceded by the causal motivation of compassion, great compassion, which is wishing sentient beings to be free of suffering. So, bodhicitta is a mind, and it's not a mental factor. It's not just the intention, it's the primary mind within which that mental factor of aspiration for enlightenment is present and has been cultivated out of compassion for sentient beings. It's said to be the doorway to the Mahayana. And even if we call ourselves a Mahayanist, even if you're born with dark olive skin and sort of Asian eyes, and you have your identity card that says you're Buddhist or you're Mahayana Buddhist, you're not really Mahayanist unless you've developed that mind. Even if we call ourselves Mahayanists or wish to be Mahayanists, it doesn't make us Mahayanists in a real sense. To be Mahayanist, you have to have entered the Mahayana path, and that's kind of like the demarcation of having entered the Mahayana path. Mark, right? Logical mark. What's the doorway? If bodhicitta is the doorway to the Mahayana path, what's the doorway to the Hinayana path? What's the demarcation of entering into the Hinayana path? This is Dhaka day.
Well, the Hinayana path is the lesser path compared to the Mahayana path.
Okay, that you've obviously done well in school because you're trying to get down everything, so at least some credit for the question. So the lesser. Yeah, that's how we do. That's how you. It's good to learn on tests. You have to get it. It's the lesser path, the path tread by the hearers and solitary realizers. But what's the if bodhicitta is the demarcation, to have that generated in our mind is what constitutes entering the Mahayana path. What event constitutes entering into the Hinayana path? Simply taking ordination, or what? Okay, so now it goes to Carrie.
I was recalling that the Hinayana path still had some self-cherishing. So I was wondering if perhaps their compassion, their ability for compassion for others was somehow hindered by their self-cherishing. I'm not sure what the demarcation is for each.
That may be true, but that's, if we're talking just about the Hinayana path, you don't have to mention about great compassion, because the Buddha actually explained the Hinayana path to his disciples, and without comparing it to the Mahayana in many cases, to the Hinayana disciples. So, Clayton, do you know?
Just the aspiration to attain enlightenment for yourself alone.
To attain enlightenment. Nirvana, maybe moksha, liberation, nirvana. So that's not exactly how it's phrased, but somewhat similar. It's what's called the generation of spontaneous renunciation. Okay, renunciation. Remember, we mentioned we talked about this several times in the course. Do the Dakinis remember this? The Dakinis know this. Okay, I should have known. It's just that guys are a little slower. You have to give us a break. The Dakinis. So renunciation has two sides, like a coin has two faces. One of them is the sense of repulsion to cyclic existence. It's being fed up, and a sense that having recognized the suffering nature, the pervasive suffering nature of cyclic existence, seeing no pleasure, even someone offers you great riches and gold and beautiful companions and whatever you might imagine, fame and so forth, seeing it like, a pile of excrement or snot, as it says in the sutras, like a bowl of vomit, completely uninteresting. Not even just like a sometimes expressed like putting a bale of hay before a lion. So the lion looks at, uninterested, even worse than that, sort of repulsive, wanting to get out. That's one side. And then the other side is what's called tardo. Many Tibetans, Venerable, do you know someone named Tardo? It's a very common Tibetan name. It means desiring liberation. So the other side of the coin is the side of the mind having, wanting, feeling repulsion here, wanting, in a sense, wanting to get out and wanting to attain liberation. Just being fed up with samsara doesn't constitute the full sense of renunciation, nor does simply wanting to attain liberation. Say someone just wants to be the first one on their block to attain liberation, but doesn't recognize the suffering nature of cyclic existence. That doesn't constitute. We used to say that when I was a kid. Be the first. Do you remember that in TV? None of you are old enough. Get the new bike, get the new kite or whatever it was, that was being sold. So that just wishing to attain liberation doesn't constitute by itself renunciation. The word that we're translating as renunciation in Tibetan is ngejong. Ngejong, like N-G-E. Ngejong means the ngejong means definite emergence. So what it refers to is a mind which is made up its determination to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, definitely leave cyclic existence. Kind of the meaning of renunciation. We may have you don't have to translate it as renunciation. You could call it definite emergence if you want. Maybe renunciation has too many connotations from the way that we mean that word. Renunciation is not a direct translation of that. It's just something very similar. When we talk about the three principles of the path, right? We talk about renunciation, conventional bodhicitta, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, right? So that's just a way of translating that. You don't have to translate it that way. Okay, so Don hasn't had a question yet. So if the doorway to the Hinayana path is the generation of spontaneous bodhicitta, and the doorway to the Mahayana path is the generation of bodhicitta, and in essence the generation of spontaneous bodhicitta, not just with effort, but rising when it arises naturally, continually, without needing to be conventional bodhicitta. Yeah. Where does the wisdom of emptiness fit into this? Who realizes the empty nature of all phenomena? Only the bodhisattvas, or only the hearers and solitary realizers, or is it not necessary to achieve liberation? It's just renunciation is enough?
Aryas, either Hinayana or Mahayana.
Aryas, they are beings who what?
And direct perception of emptiness.
Direct perception of emptiness. So can you have a realization of emptiness before you have a direct perception of emptiness?
And have an inferential one.
You can have an inferential realization. Can you have a realization of emptiness before that? Before an inferential realization?
You mean a direct one?
No, realization, just realization.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, now I'm going to have to, only one who's left is Dorje, and he usually humbly refrains from answering questions to not to show his brilliance. So I will ask instead Diana. Yeah, it's a kindness of him too. So is Don right? You can have a realization of emptiness before direct realization, and before an inferential realization. You can have a realization of emptiness.
I don't think
So.
I thought the only two. Well, this is from our Thursday night class, but I thought the only types of realization were direct perception and inferential cognition.
Yeah, this is from the depth of your wisdom. It's not just from our Thursday night class, right? Right, because to realize something, it said in Buddhist teachings, it said there are only two ways that you can realize something. The only what we say prime cognition, prime cognizer, pramana, like prime knower. Mana can mean also knower. There are only two kinds. Inferential cognition, when you realize something intellectually via a inference, And these are the only two kind of prime cognitions. And the other kind is a direct realization of that. Or in the highest philosophical school, in the Prasangika, any continuity of those realizations, which in the lower schools we call a subsequent cognizer. But until you've had an inference, everything else that even you think you understand emptiness is just a belief. It's just a presumption on your part, perhaps a correct belief. Maybe it's just a doubt. But that doesn't mean that that's not powerful or useful, because even a doubt, let alone a correct belief, it said, Aryadeva, many of the great saints say, even having a doubt that maybe, doubt leading in the right direction, maybe things are empty of true existence, that can shake the roots of our cyclic existence. That kind of thing can leave imprints in our mind to actually pursue that in the future. Most people don't have any doubt at all. Those things just exist, come on, give me a break. If they have a doubt, it's equally balanced or leaning in the wrong direction. So even having a doubt leaning in the right direction is very powerful.
I have a question.
Yes.
I thought there was being in the mind stream of a superior.
You thought there was what in?
Another option of being in the mind stream of a superior and being able to have an experience through, it sounded like kind of a yogic experience, like by being around someone who has realized emptiness and in their presence, that you might be able to have that experience.
Kind of just like what do they call in the Hindu traditions? Like darshan, come sitting at the foot of the being, and then sort of tuning in. Once you get it tuned in, can you do that, Venerable? Tune in the right, sit at the foot of the Dalai Lama and tune in, and then suddenly. Certainly, there's some obviously the juxtaposition of our spiritual guides, especially when we have faith in them, or just by their karmic, their charisma and so forth, can be very powerful. But the Buddha himself said in a very famous verse that comes in the verses, what's it called? The Udana, I can't remember what's called in Pali. Anyway, he said, the Buddhas don't take away suffering like taking a thorn from the foot. They don't wash away sins like bathing in the Ganges. They don't grant blessings by hand, kind of zap, you're in my presence. I'm going to give carry. They show the way. They lead the way. And so if the Buddhas do, you might say, well, don't the Buddhas use magical powers? Don't the Buddhas sometimes demonstrate their clairvoyance, and they have magical powers? Isn't that, can't that benefit sentient beings? It can benefit sentient beings, but it's a way, it's explained in the scriptures, that's a way for the Buddhas, besides the necessity to use that, to enact certain deeds sometime, that's the way to develop faith in the minds of others, showing some kind of incredible power. Then people will take you seriously, so to speak. Up till then you're just, another gal, another guy. So the Buddhas don't, if the Buddhas could, simply by their presence or some kind of supernatural agency like that, just kind of, I don't know, what's the word, zap you, or what would you say? That zap sounds a bit too... Transform you, or infuse you with something. Wouldn't the Buddhas, you'd have to say the Buddhas, because I'm still dull and dumb, you'd have to say the Buddhas are very uncompassionate because they haven't done it to me yet. They're partial. They've only done it to some Buddhist disciples who praised them enough, and therefore they zap them. That's not the case, obviously. The Buddhas have total impartiality. They're not partial to those who praise them and benefit them in some way. Those kinds of actions are understood as beneficial because they accumulate virtuous karma. But from the side of the Buddhas, they're not saying, okay, I'm going to help Carrie because he gave me a big torma. Clayton's torma is just painted on a piece of wood. It doesn't taste good. I'm not giving him any realizations. carries has got some butter and cashews in it. I'm giving him realization. From their side, they're completely uninterested in what we offer. They experience bliss with everything, but they teach us to make offerings and say the 7-limb puja and so forth, what we call offering to the spiritual guide, because puja means to please, right? To please the either the guru or the deity or whatever. What pleases the gurus is not the same thing that pleases worldly gods or spirits or whatever. You know, you give them a bowl of blood, or you vow allegiance to them, or you know, you slaughter, or you give them something. That doesn't please. That's not the way of pleasing the Buddhas. What pleases the Buddhas is for us to get closer to enlightenment, to benefit sentient beings. So in making the 7-limb offering, that's called puja because it pleases the Buddhas, not because we've offered, 1,000 bowls of water. I think they could care less, for the water. They've got the oceans, their disposal. They've got divine water. They've got they experience everything with bliss. So the Buddhas don't transmit their knowledge. They lead the way, and they cultivate people's minds in order to lead the way like that.
So how does offering a bowl of water result in positive karma then? If it's not the Buddhas, seeing that offering and bestowing, a benefit, then what is?
Do you think the benefit of the offering comes about because, let's say, in the world, for instance, if you wanted to get something done in India, Venerable will know this. You have to bring maybe an envelope. You go to the visa office, and before you talk, you put it under the blotter with a little thing out on the side, and you smile, and then the visa official sort of looks around, and at some point they take out and they look, and then they give you your visa. You get something for giving. It's not that way with offering. It's not that the Buddhas, having been given water, give mark later. You might think that's how karma works. That I gave gold to the Buddha, and later Buddha gives gold back to me. It's if you offer to the of any fields of merit, you create the cause to receive, and by the power of that field, the more kind and high that field is, the greater the karmic efficacy is. Even you give to your parents, that's much stronger, much higher field of merit than most other living beings, perhaps rivaling those in great need. Those are also a greater field of merit, that the karmic efficacy of giving to them is greater, and that there will be a reflection of that, like the law of cause and effect, karma.
Well, I can understand the concept of doing an action and then that producing a positive or negative, karmic result. But I don't understand the concept of purification. What do I do that purifies and removes negative karma? How does it magically go away without? Am I creating a positive karma that destructs like antimatter and matter? Or
okay. Well, you've heard this before, so maybe now's a good time to listen again. There are 4 opponent forces, the Buddha taught, 4 powerful forces to purify negative karma. None of them by themselves just cause karma to, like antimatter, like you said, you bring in something and suddenly the karma is gone, the negative karma. Karmic imprints that we've left in our mind have a certain potential to bring some negative consequence to us, if we're talking about negative karma, right? Negative karmic seeds. One of the most powerful ways to first diminish the power of that, which is in a sense purifying it. Say, for instance, if you wanted to clean a pot or purify the place, purify the pot, even if it's not totally purified, you say you're purifying it, right? You put some incense around, even though there's some garbage still in some places. Maybe you want to pick up some of the garbage, put some incense and perfume around, and do other things. And in that process, you're purifying, right? So in the same way, one of the first steps is to feel regret or remorse about the negative action we did. which is the opposite of rejoicing. Usually what we do in our negative actions is we feel good about it, you know. Oh, wait, I don't know, is that how they do it? What do they do? There's something this way, right? I never learned that. Yeah, what does that mean anyway? Yes. Got it. Oh, got it. That's what, so you've got to close the hand? Thank you. Wow, Americana. I've been out of the States so long. Yeah, that's it. Got it. Yeah, okay, grasping. So usually we think, we rejoice about our negative actions, and that increases their potency. However, if you regret having done them consciously, even if you don't remember the particular instances, regret in general that you must have harmed others before, you must have said bad things to others before, because we hear bad words now. We hear criticism of ourselves. We must have acted immorally. We must have been impatient. We must have been, ungenerous, miserly in the past, because we don't find all of the riches and resources coming quickly. So to regret those is one of the main ways to start to purify. Secondly, also is to, not necessarily in this order, but also is very important, is to make a resolution not to do that action again in the future. Make in a sense, a vow. I shouldn't do that. I will not do this again. I will not kill. I will not steal, or I will not get angry. Even if you're not able to keep that vow perfectly, to begin to make some kind of resolution like that can be very powerful. That explanation of that takes some time to understand. That's why we take vows. The Buddha said that of the different kinds of karmic effects of our negative actions, one of the most pernicious is the habitual effect, doing the action again in the future. So you kill someone, and of course you're going to get killed, and you're going to die, you suffer, and so forth. That's not bad enough, but the fact that because of that, you leave an imprint in your mind to kill again, and to keep that going. So if you can help to cut that part of the karmic energy, that's also purifying that. Also, the Buddha talked about the power of reliance, and this is explained by our Galupa Lamas. It's understood this way, that when you fall down, you have to rely on something to get up again. If you fall to the ground, you have to rely on the earth to push on that to get up again. The two objects that you can rely on, two fields with whom we create negative karma, the same two fields that we create virtuous karma, sentient beings and the triple gem. So with respect to the triple gem, if you've created negative karma with them, the way to rely on them is to take refuge. Again, rather than ignoring them, denigrating them, thinking the Dharma is not important, even in some way, even if you don't maybe verbalize that way, we do think other things are more important than the Dharma. We rely on other things. We rely on finding the right friend, or the money, or the fame, or whatever like this. So taking refuge in the Dharma, especially, and the Buddha who taught it, and the Sangha who help us to take that medicine. And then with respect to sentient beings, the negative karma that we create with respect to them, the way to rely on them is, from the Mahayana point of view, is to develop bodhicitta, meditate on bodhicitta. So at the beginning of almost all of our practices, there are prayers of taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So if you do that sincerely, in the context of especially thinking of the negative actions you've done, that is one of the powers that helps to purify the potency of those negative actions. Because those negative actions were done without refuge. Otherwise you wouldn't have engaged in them, and without bodhicitta. And then finally there's the power of the antidote. Even these other powers may not totally eliminate all of the karmic consequences of something, but by creating some virtue to compensate for that, and praying that it compensate, perhaps in a sense it's kind of like creating what we call what's it called? You know, when you take a rope, you have a black string and a white string together. What is that called? White string together. Okay, black string, white string together. Okay, mottled cloth or striped cloth, striped karma. I can't remember what it's called. What's it called? What do they call it? Mixed karma, something. Mixed karma, striped karma, something. So, for instance, even though, say, for instance, you've stolen something from mom's purse or something like that, and then later you come to regret that, and then you actually give her a gift, or you make, or in other cases, if you've embezzled or something, you give to the poor, and you help. In particular, you, besides regretting, vowing not to do again, taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, but then you do something, compensate for that. Could be all other things also. It doesn't have to be the exact opposite. Can be reading the sutras, painting stupas, making pictures of Buddha, many, many different things, helping beings that are sick. That karma then, even some residue of the negativity rises in the future. There'll be, maybe you get a bill in the future, you know, for something that you didn't expect, you know. But then suddenly someone says, oh, I'll pay the bill for you. Maybe, something like that. Give an example, you know. So the consequences are modified in that way. So those are the ways that we purify negative karma, mainly. And there are different ways. The main things are different kind of purificatory practices, purifying practices like Vajrasattva and 35 confession Buddhas. And
Those are what's confusing.
okay, they are. Where do they fall? Where do they fall? Which of those opponent forces are they? Which one?
Well, it's partly the antidote.
Refuge?
Well, in the sadhana there'll be I forgot Tibetan name. What is it? Mindro, Venerable Sarah. I mean, it's auspicious. She's going to be a nun sometime. Mainly those things like Vajrasattva or saying the names of the Buddhas, the 35 Buddhas, or making prostrations. That mainly falls under the category of the antidote, power of the antidote. But while you do those, if you're doing it to purify, you may be doing it with a very strong motivation of regret. Oh, God, I shouldn't have done that. You know, whoa, I've let my temper go again. I said bad words. I've had bad intention toward my Vajra brothers and sisters, or whatever you're purifying. Then out of that motivation, you're making, say, prostrations, reciting the 35 Confession Buddha Sutra, reciting the names. That's particularly the power of the antidote there. And then within that sutra, it's called the Three Heap Sutra. There are the other powers. There's the power of regret and the power of reliance, refuge and generating bodhicitta, and so forth. And so all of those powers are there. But most of those, even Vajrasattva, when you're reciting Vajrasattva mantra, at that moment, the main thing that you're doing is the power of the antidote. Although it's still, if it's motivated by regret, that hopefully that's going to be one of the powerful things there. Yeah.
Just a quick question. You mentioned renunciation, conventional bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness as being three something or others. And I missed the something or other.
Yeah, I didn't call them the three something or others. I'm joking. They're called the three principles of the path.
Okay, that's what
Lamso Namsum in Tibetan. There's a famous text by Lama Tsongkhapa. That's not all they're called. This is how Lama Tsongkhapa had a direct vision of Manjushri. And Manjushri said, okay, look it. You wrote the Lanrim, good. You wrote the Lanrim Chemo, fine. Talked about the three persons, the person of beginning scope, medium scope, and great scope. But it would be very beneficial to write a text explaining these three aspects, these three principles of the path. Sometimes it's called the three principal aspects of the path, but I don't think that's a good translation. Nam in this sense doesn't mean aspect. We use namsum, just means the three kinds, the three principles of the path. It doesn't have the main meaning of nampa when we talk about aspects. In the all of the different Buddhist traditions, the Tibetan traditions, in the what is it called? In Sakya tradition, there's a famous text called Parting from the Three Attachments, which mainly is talking about those three attachments, talking about renunciation and so forth, bodhicitta and realizing emptiness. And they're recognized in all of the traditions. These are the three principal kind of realizations that we need. We need. Even to achieve bodhicitta, not possible to develop bodhicitta without having developed renunciation. It's said even if you haven't developed renunciation, spontaneous renunciation previously, because then you would have entered into the Hinayana path, at the moment of developing spontaneous bodhicitta, you will have real renunciation conjoined with that. No way that you can have a sense of bodhicitta, wishing sentient beings to be free of suffering, until you've actually understood the depth of your own dilemma, what it really means. Otherwise, if you don't have real renunciation and you just think, oh, that's for Theravada or Hinayana or something, I'm a Mahayanist. I'm taking bliss into the path. I'm a Tantrika, or whatever. One's fooling oneself if one hasn't trained in that. So renunciation, which is what we have to really train our mind into, really recognizing all of it. That's probably where most of us can put a lot of effort. I find of all of the things that's most useful for my mind is to recognize when Buddha talked about the truth of suffering, that what we call samsaric happiness is actually the nature of suffering, is of a unsatisfactory nature, is what the Buddha called changeable suffering. Not because it eventually changes into suffering, but it does, changes into overt suffering eventually. Your chocolate chip ice cream, if you eat enough of it, the pleasure of eating it suddenly turns into pain when you embracing Richard Gere for 6 or 10 hours suddenly is no longer pleasure, After something. You don't know about that? Okay. But even at the moment you're experiencing what we call that pleasure, it's merely relief. It's one suffering going down, replacing it with another contaminated phenomena, which is giving you some relief, until the contact with that contaminated phenomena gets too big. And then you recognize it as suffering. Say, for instance, if someone were to say, I love you. When you hear that the first time, whoa. Your heart bathed in nectar, stars revolving in the sky. You hear a couple more times, But if you were to be, let's say we were to tie you down to a chair and have someone just tell you continuously, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Just the words themselves, even the concept, even knowing that at a certain point no longer brings relief. And at a certain point, maybe even becomes a burden and a problem. Having wealth, having ice cream, having your stash, whatever it is, your big pile of pistachios or whatever. Your Lexus becomes a problem at some point. So to recognize that is a good step, I think, for us. It's said even dogs, insects, everyone can understand suffering of suffering is to be abandoned. That's not a big deal. It's said that humans have the capacity of understanding changeable suffering is to be abandoned. It's something that we have the capacity, the wisdom to understand, but we haven't understood that yet completely. Although a lot of people today do have a good sense of that. It's said that Arya beings can even understand the pervasive, all compounding suffering of merely having contaminated aggregates as suffering. It's like, it's said that for them it's like taking a hair and sticking it in the eye, so obvious suffering. For us, when we think about that, the suffering of having contaminated aggregates, it doesn't really, it's kind of like taking the hair and putting it in your palm. You don't feel anything, you're not sensitive to that. But the Aryas who've opened up their wisdom eye, they recognize merely having a situation in which we're under the influence of karma and our afflictions is totally suffering, dukkha. You might call it unsatisfactory, but not to put too fine a line on it, suffering. You know? So that is necessary as a basis, and then to develop on the basis of that, to train the mind in bodhicitta, the great bodhisattva's deeds, and on the basis of having developed bodhicitta, to engage in the bodhisattva activities. And especially in either case, if one has only developed renunciation to achieve liberation, you need the wisdom that realizes selflessness and emptiness. In order to fulfill the bodhisattva path, you need the wisdom that realizes emptiness. So these two motivations, you might say, renunciation, bodhicitta, they go hand in hand. For the Mahayanist, one also develops renunciation. For the Hinayanists, they have mainly renunciation alone as their motivation. They develop the wisdom that realizes emptiness to bring about that aim through practice of morality, concentration, wisdom, the three higher trainings. The Bodhisattva brings about their goal through practicing the six perfections, especially the perfection of wisdom, all the other perfections acting as a cause of that. Okay, so maybe worthwhile. We could have just talked about the verses, but sometimes I like to just check a little bit. So why don't we, before we begin, why don't we take a little break? And is there some tea for you? Maybe. Okay, some caffeine and sugar, and then come back renewed, and then we'll dive into the text. Okay. Okay. So verse 91. Did we start last time? Now it starts a different structure. Up to now, it's been talking about the disadvantages of self-cherishing thought in one way, with a refrain that came in every verse. Now the final verses of the text begin to talk about other things, and at verse 102, we start talking about emptiness and the wisdom realizing emptiness, ultimate bodhicitta. So here it says, aha. Is that how you say that? Or ah? Aha. I don't know if aha is very good. Aha. Emma. How would you translate Emma? Venerable, what do you say? I always say Emma ho in the sutras. Like, whoa. You whose strength is that of the ultimate body of the Sugata. Who's the Sugata? It's got a capital S there. Why is it? What do you mean? It says Sugata. It doesn't say Buddha. Who's Sugata?
It's kind of like a conqueror.
A conqueror? What does Sugata mean?
A conqueror that conquers the demon of the egotistic view.
That's not the meaning of Sugata. What does Sugata mean? You've heard of different epithets of the Buddha, right? The Tathagata.
Yeah.
What? What's right there?
It says the Sugata is a being who has achieved or gone to perfect cessation.
Perfect cessation.
Sugata. Yeah. Su in Sanskrit is kind of like a superlative particle, so well gone. You know. In this case, it means gone to what's really the good place to go. Cessation. Not just well gone some other way. So it's one of the names of the Buddha. There are different epithets. You know, when His Holiness teaches, oftentimes we recite some prayers at the beginning. You know these verses, right? We say the different epithets of the Buddha. So, Sugata, Dewa Shakpa, I think in Tibetan. You whose strength is that of the ultimate body of the Sugata, who conquers the demon of the egotistic view. You, wielder of the staff of the weapon of wisdom, of selflessness, the weapon of the wisdom of selflessness, turn it over your head 3 times without hesitation. So this is a entreaty to prayer to Yamantaka, right? And the wisdom, when you see sometimes Yamataka, so different emanations of Yamataka have more arms or less arms, 2-armed, solitary, realizer, or how many arms does the more elaborate Yamataka have? Do you know, Venerable? 36 arms? It's got to be an even number, right? So, 36 arms. 36 arms. Okay, so in one of the arms he's holding a, what would you call a cudgel or a cudgel? Cudgel, club that's made out of bone, and there's a skull on the top that in one sense represents the wisdom of emptiness and also the wisdom of impermanence. And so this is what it says, the wielder of the staff, the weapon of wisdom, of selflessness. Turn it over your head 3 times without hesitation. So this is, there's different commentary about what this means to, eliminate one time, turning it over, eliminate the self-grasping, eliminate the self-cherishing thought, eliminate the continuity of the contaminated aggregates, it says in some of the commentaries. But mainly what this is just now, after having gone through many verses here telling the disadvantages of this self-cherishing thought in all of those various ways, recognizing it, the wheel of sharp weapons coming back from all of everything that we've done that we recognize as uncomfortable is the result of our negative karma coming back to us. Now calling upon Yamantaka. So is this kind of futile, I can't do anything, I'm going to call in Yamantaka? Or it's just like praying at the end, I can't do this, so you do it. What's the point of entreating, Elaine, what do you think, entreating Yamantaka?
Well, I think it's more a matter of your own calling on Yamantaka to develop your own power, to cut through your own ignorance.
I think you're right. I think even when we pray to Manjushri, it's not so much, remember like Mark's question, it's not as though you pray to Manjushri to increase your wisdom, therefore he'll increase your wisdom. It's by getting close to Manjushri that way, by creating that karma, that the blessings can enter your mind, and through your own efforts then, that can accelerate your development of wisdom. So here, I think also, when it's calling on Yamantaka, it means calling on your own potential to emanate as Yamantaka, to visualize yourself as Yamantaka, to create karmic connection with Yamantaka, to help develop the wisdom of emptiness, because Yamantaka is considered to be the wrathful form, the most wrathful form of Manjushri, right? And in that form, Manjushri is the definitive Manjushri is not a being. The definitive Manjushri is actually the wisdom of all of the Buddhas, the wisdom of emptiness, non-dual realization of emptiness of all the Buddhas. That's the definitive Manjushri. When Manjushri appears in the interpretative way, it appears as a deity, either in the lower tantras or upper tantras, or as a bodhisattva, whatever, in some form that can help to inculcate, to help us to attain that ultimate definitive state of Manjushri, of wisdom. So this is kind of an entreaty to that. Whoa. I like that instead of aha, Emma. 92. I pray you, kill the enemy with your fierce wrath. I pray you. Is that right? I pray you? Is that poetic or what? It's not, maybe that's what I pray you. Subdue my evil thinking with your great wisdom. I pray you, protect me from my evil actions with your great compassion. I pray you, destroy this ego once and for all. So again, this is making requests to the external Manjushri, in the sense of the wisdom of all the Buddhas, to grant their blessings to our mind stream. It's not as though they wouldn't, so in the sense, Mark, also, in the sense that if we don't pray, what do you think, Mark? If we don't pray, they wouldn't help? Frank. Who's Mark? Oh, so Mark's in the other class. Okay, Frank. Sorry.
I met him in Amy's class. I know we talked about.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
He's my brother, though. So.
He's your brother?
Well, spiritual.
Spiritual brother. Frank. Okay. Frank. Let's be frank about this. If you don't pray to Manjushri, he's not going to do these things? Is that why we pray? We sort of get his attention. Hey, Manjushri, please, here, I'm here.
I think they're using the outer aspect to contact the, the inner manifestation of the same energy that Manjushri represents.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, prayer like this is kind of like, in Tibetan we say, the word for prayer is monlam. Have you heard that word before, monlam? Do you know what that means, Venerable? Monlam?
Well, I know that they use it for prayer.
Yeah. Monpa means to wish or aspire, and lam means path. So the path of aspiration, maybe you can say. And so, in a sense, I think of it this way: if sometimes people the Buddhas may be trying to help us, but if we're not aware, if we haven't aspired, opened up our mind to their blessings, even the outer help of others, people might be giving us help and loving us, and we're completely oblivious to that. Sometimes people think, oh, no one loves me, and everyone's taking care of them all the time. Do you ever experience, people like that? Oh, nobody loves me. I'm so, and then everyone's giving them so much love and care. They don't see it because they haven't opened up their heart to recognizing that. So Monlam, making prayer, also is in a sense opening up your mind to being receptive, like praying. So then you're alert. It's like if you've fallen into a deep hole in the ground, and there's no way for you to climb out. If someone out of kindness were to be lowering a rope to you, if you're not praying for it, if you're not expecting it, or you might swat it out of the way, thinking it's a serpent or something that's about to harm you. So praying to Yamantaka in that sense, also opening up your mind to the entry of the blessings of the omniscient mind. I say the enlightened activity, the Tibetans say tinlay, of the Buddhas that can help to provide some other factor that can accelerate your realization. Without you doing anything from your side, it doesn't bring about any realization. But prayer can help in that sense, and also to make karmic connection by praying like that with the manifestation of Buddha's wisdom, so that the blessings can be, by creating that karmic connection, the blessings can be more strong. Subdue my evil thinking with your great wisdom. So not only, this means, how is the Buddha's wisdom going to subdue your evil thinking, other than you generating that wisdom yourself, right? Protect me from my evil actions with your great compassion. How can the Buddha's great compassion protect you from your evil actions? What do you think, Venerable? Any idea? What do you think? How can the Buddha's compassion protect you from your evil actions?
What do you mean?
Yeah? Oh, okay. What do you think? No idea. I think, in a sense, calling on the Buddha's compassion to teach us and to guide us, to teach us what is right and wrong, and to help us to protect ourselves from those actions. Otherwise, again, just the Buddhas, if we just say, stop me from doing this, as though there'll be someone there always when you're about to do something, stopping you. I'm not sure that's what's intended here. Geshe-la, let's see here, Geshe-la said here, this is verse 92. Yamantaka is very fierce. He has weapons in his hands, 4 bared fangs, and his body is poised to attack and kill the enemy. Here we are requesting him to conquer with his great wisdom our wrong conceptual thoughts, stemming from the view of a real personal identity and self-cherishing. We are asking him to protect us with his great compassion from our bad karma, which brings such harsh suffering. In that way, he is being asked to completely destroy ego clinging, the great enemy of the world. Geshe doesn't go into detail how that is brought about. Verse 93, however much suffering those in cyclic existence may endure, I pray you, heap it surely upon ego clinging. However many of the 5 poisonous afflictions anyone may experience, I pray you, and he likes this, I pray you, heap them surely upon this ego clinging, which richly deserves them. Does that make sense to you? Why would you be praying whatever suffering those in cyclic existence may endure, others are enduring, heap it surely upon ego clinging, ego grasping. However many of the 5 poisonous afflictions anyone may experience, heap them surely upon this ego clinging, which richly deserves them. What's the point there?
That would keep you in cyclic existence.
Pardon me?
You're asking him to help you get out of cyclic existence by hitting it on the ego clinging.
Help you get out of cyclic existence. I don't know that to get out of cyclic existence, I don't think you'd have to do this.
I think you'd have to get rid of your ego clinging.
Yeah, but I don't think this is mainly, this kind of practice is the Bodhisattva's practice of eliminating in tandem the self-cherishing thought and the self-grasping. Here, this practice, like Tonglen, this is one part of Lempa, taking, right? Imagining, having seen, as we've talked so many verses, the defects of the self-cherishing thought. Now, really being convinced of that. Really being convinced this is the enemy. Now beginning to think there is a way to eliminate this, to erode this. Remember when we talked at the beginning of the Course so many times about the vital point. One way to erode this, to cause the self-cherishing thought to be disintegrated, is by consciously, with your wisdom, deciding to endure suffering for the welfare of others. Whatever occurs to you, first of all, that you can't avoid anyway, to be able to transform that and recognize, I'm going to be patient with this as though I'm taking on the suffering of all sentient beings. And then eventually to actually imagine in Tonglen taking on suffering that you don't have anyway, and imagine experiencing that. May I be the last one to achieve enlightenment. May I be the lowest. Preparing the mind in that way. I think that kind of resolution is a big breakthrough, I think, to actually recognize the self-cherishing thought as the enemy rather than the outer conditions and our, blaming our karma or something else. All of, our karma, obviously, and outer conditions are cooperative conditions. Karma is sort of a substantial condition for our suffering. But the main cause of our karma is our self-cherishing thought and our self-grasping. That's what has created it in the past. That's what makes it unbearable now. That's what will continue and keep us in cyclic existence in the future. So really thinking about it that way, this is the real enemy. Then understanding from the teachings such as this, that the very special method is to take that suffering, first of all, that you are experiencing anyway, and experience it with equanimity, and actually think, I'm doing this. Imagine as you're experiencing whatever you are experiencing, think, I'm experiencing other people's suffering. May they be free. And to not only think of it exhausting your negative karma and and other methods that we talked about in mind training, but actually developing a joyous mind, thinking that I'm benefiting other sentient beings. I'm taking on their suffering and I'm putting it on not me. I'm not making me suffering. I'm putting it on the self-cherishing thought, because that eventually can erode, and I can be left in a state like the Buddha where any kind of hardship is no longer recognized as hardship, is totally accepted, and one has joy in whatever one does. So this is now talking about that kind of practice. These kinds of thoughts, whatever suffering there is that beings in cyclic existence endure, put it all on my ego clinging. my egotistic mind. However many of the 5 poisonous afflictions anyone may experience, I pray heap them surely upon my ego clinging, which richly deserves them. So here, different ways. Say, for instance, when your mind becomes proud or angry or jealous or doubtful or, attached or ignorant or whatever, you can imagine that also, those minds in the states, in the mind, those states of mind, in other sentient beings, as praying that those minds, those unwholesome minds, ripen upon you now. And even when you experience those states of mind now, you can experience them in a different way, rather than only thinking to apply the antidote immediately so you don't create negative karma. Think, I will endure this, even when you can't control the mind. Think, I will endure this state of mind so that others can be free of this. Yeehaw! This is American, I think, in case anyone's watching this.
When you first start to do it, when you don't have the experience, do you have to go on faith that it's actually going to work? Because it seems so strange, like you just.
Well, they're different. Obviously,
have, like, a certain amount of faith that this is actually going to this is going to do something. This is really going to transform.
I think there are a lot of different levels of practice. I find that my own personality is such that merely doing on faith wasn't very powerful. But with a little bit of understanding, seeing the disadvantages of the self-cherishing thought, seeing the advantages of cherishing others as a basis, also as a basis to take on suffering, out of a sense of compassion, wanting others to be free of suffering, taking it away from there and putting it on this one. Sort of those two go together: compassion and and seeing the defect of the self-cherishing thought, wanting to take it away from there, put it here where it belongs. Because this one is the real enemy. This is what should be having the suffering, so that it's eradicated. And then with a sense of cherishing others, wanting them to be happy, and seeing the benefits of cherishing them, taking, giving whatever virtues you have, your body, your merits of the 3 times, your possessions and so forth, imagine giving them to other sentient beings, wishing that they would have everything that's good, all the all the things that we might otherwise wish for. So you can do, I think even doing it out of faith can bring some benefit, but I have a feeling that if one didn't learn anything else, merely doing it out of faith might not, for a lot of people, might not be enough to perpetuate the practice, to keep a person satisfied, because what am I doing? Someone says, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You're foolish. That's silly, that's stupid. Then if you don't have some reason in your mind to understand the benefit of that, if you haven't convinced yourself of the benefit of that, you might easily be swayed. So you have to understand karma and have prepared like this in the various levels of understanding that can make this meditation more powerful. So basically it's developing affection for others and great compassion, at least to some level, seeing the defects of the self-cherishing thought. This is what's caused this problem in the past, created all this negative karma. This is what's making it unbearable now. Even I have to suffer this. Even the Buddhas, or Shariputra, Mahamoggallana, they experienced suffering, but even they had self-cherishing thought, they experienced it with equanimity. It's just there. They didn't identify with that suffering. But for us, because of self-cherishing thought and ego grasping, even the negative karma we created in the past is unbearable to us, so we create more. And we're going to have it forever unless we do something about it. It's not something that will disappear like a bad dream, or maybe Buddha will forget about it, maybe like we might think, we did something bad And after a couple of weeks, Dad will forget about it. He won't be angry any longer, God or something. And or karma's not that way, and the afflictions are not that way. Unless we do something about them, they're not going to go away. They're going to get worse. Frank?
Is all Tonglen practice about keeping the suffering on the ego clinging part? Or, I think of, the bodhisattva who slices off his flesh and feeds it to somebody. He's not really slicing off his ego clinging or, putting that suffering on his... I think of it as more taking on the suffering himself.
That's not necessarily Tonglen, that giving of the flesh. Tonglen is a particular method to develop bodhicitta. So at that point, to really give one's flesh is the proper time to give one's flesh is not even when one has developed bodhicitta for the first time. Even spontaneous bodhicitta. It's said that when, even when on the path of accumulation, one has real bodhicitta, it's not the proper time to give one's flesh. It's said that, I think I've mentioned this before, that was why Shariputra, even though at one time he'd entered into the Mahayana path, he tried to give his hand to someone who asked for it, but he gave it to him with his left hand, and the spirit, the demon, said, how uncouth, you gave it to me with your left hand, I'm not going to take it. And his bodhicitta degenerated because of that, because he hadn't reached a point of stability. It said that the bodhisattvas generally don't give their flesh or their body like that until they achieve the path of seeing. That's the proper time, in which case their body is a mental body, and there's no pain, there's only joy in giving.
Well, I'm more thinking that when I learned about Tonglen, I don't recall the discussion about taking the negativities and focusing it on your ego. I just remember breathing in their suffering and giving them back, love and compassion.
Right. So, what we're doing is we're going into more detail here. So maybe that can make it a little more, as Beth was saying, not just on faith. This is something you do. It's not just like a magic thing, but there's a reason for that. And if you know the vital point, that you're putting it on the self-cherishing thought, then you see the purpose of it. The more and more you see the defect of the self-cherishing thought, then the more you're willing to bear with the karma that ripens on you that's unsavory, that the unpleasant karma, because you recognize that as having been created by the negative, by the self-cherishing thought. Now you're going to let the self-cherishing thought, what do we say? You created it, you experience it. What do we say? We have something in American. You live with it, Yeah, you did it, you live with it. What is it? You deal with it.
I just wanted to say that I think it is true that you can do this initially on faith, and then you see the benefit of the practice. Because if you have a suffering mind, and you recognize you even wish to practice, if you're in a state of self-pity mind, and you have a wish to practice by doing Tonglen, and you force yourself to say, okay, somebody said this is going to work, so you sit down and you actually try to do it, and you do see that simply by doing the practice, it relieves the self-pity mind. There's no room for it anymore when you're doing that practice. So you're starting on faith, you see the benefit, and then it can grow.
It can work that way, definitely. That often many lamas in the Tibetan tradition, they simply teach about Tonglen, but here in this course, we have the leisure to go in a little more detail, to understand in more depth. It's true that when you start to think of others in general, if you start to realize when the pity mind, self-pity, what was my father used to say thing, I can't remember something. So what do we say? Just thinking of yourself, feeling sorry for yourself. When that mind is present, becomes compulsive, and the conceptual thought pattern, the discursive thoughts are constantly revolving around that my problem. So simply to put your mind at first just to think about other people's problems, you see the depth of suffering of others. Your own problem looks so small in comparison. So obviously this can have a similar kind of effect. But in terms of like Frank's question about, he hadn't heard this explained about putting it on the self-cherishing thought. It actually is explained in the Lamrim, but in a very brief explanation. It may not be explained in detail also because this goes through the translator and so forth and so on. But here we're getting, as Dharma Rakshita said at the beginning of the text, it's very important to find the vital point if you want to make some progress. Otherwise, you can be flailing around for a long time doing Tonglen, but not realizing that you're just thinking, the more I suffer, the better. And you just, but at a certain point, your mind can't take it. You have to recognize you're putting the unbearable situation on the self-cherishing thought. You don't want to eradicate Frank.
Obstacles on yourself. You're wishing
to
eradicate.
You're trying to put it in a situation where the self-cherishing thought that it always wanted its own way is now experiencing again and again that which it doesn't want, and in that way it begins to lose its sway over you, its power, and you can actually develop bodhicitta. And then wishing others to be happy also, to equalize and exchange oneself with others. Let's go a little bit further. 94. Although through reasoning I've identified without a doubt all the roots of evil, if you judge that I am still abetting them, I pray you destroy the holder himself. And so, sometimes we may have actually identified the self-cherishing thought as the actual enemy. We have no doubt about it, but still we don't have the energy to do anything. So here it's asking, maybe it's better I die in a situation like that, have another rebirth. I think Geshe Zopa mentioned something in this context about sometimes great lamas, when there's a certain evil spirit that can't be controlled by other means, they actually engage in transference of consciousness. They transfer that being's consciousness to another realm and cause them to leave that body, and in so doing, put them in a different state where maybe different karma can ripen. One of my teacher, Khyentse Trijang Rinpoche, who was my abbot, he used to say, when the mind is completely crazy, you can't do anything with the mind, go to sleep. Go to bed, go to sleep. Wake up with a fresh mind. I think it's a little bit similar, like new state. It's so much, just go to, Of course, meditators wouldn't necessarily do that. They would try to calm the mind through meditation. If you can, it's obviously more, it's going to lead maybe another more sophisticated level of practice rather than just going to sleep. But I think Khyentse Trijang Rinpoche's advice is very good. So in a sense, arising then in a new state where the winds are different and so forth, so at least you can start fresh again, think of the situation in a new way. 95. Now drive all blame onto one thing. I shall cultivate gratitude toward all beings, take onto my mind what others abhor, and turn over the roots of my virtue to all beings. A very powerful verse. There's this particular line, drive all blame unto one thing. And it comes in the mind, many of the mind training texts and the 7-point training of the mind. Put all blame or drive all blame onto one thing. What's the one thing that you blame? George Bush? Ego clinging and ego self-cherishing, right? So, whatever happens, rather than, start to train, it's the result of this, rather than it's their fault. It's the result of the self-cherishing thought. And of course, just training that way superficially, just on the level of faith, can have some effect, for sure. But actually understanding the truth of that is going to have, understanding it understanding the validity of it, knowing it with reason can have a greater longevity in your mind rather than just having faith in that. Really, over time, studying a text like this and actually trying to put it in practice, and not just, of course, seeing the benefit for your mind, as you say, when you no longer, you don't think about yourself, your self-pity or your feeling sorry for yourself as much when you start to think of others, but actually recognizing that the goal of enlightenment, where you can really benefit sentient beings, is hindered by this self-cherishing thought. This is not only hindering you, it's hindering all sentient beings from you being a Buddha. There's certain sentient beings who are going to be enlightened by Frank and by Clayton, believe it or not. And, no, I'm joking, just teasing. There's some sentient beings, before Clayton attains enlightenment, they might not be enlightened, that he has the particular karmic connection with to enlighten. So there's certain sentient beings who are relying on us. The longer we, what's the word, dawdle? Sort of just take it easy. The longer they are going to be without our aid in achieving enlightenment.
Why would they be relying on us?
Because even, let's say, for instance, all of you attain enlightenment, and you all manifest as Manjushri, or as Avalokiteshvara, or some different manifestation we don't even know about. You all have this, exactly look the same, you all have perfect power, perfect compassion, no difference in your capacity, but there is a difference from my side. Even all of you are here. Some of you may have, my karmic connection with your mind stream from previous lives is such that even Frank teaches me the same thing you teach me. Maybe what you teach me works for me because of the karmic connection we have from previous lives. So it's, even though the Buddhas, when we achieve enlightenment, we all have exactly the same power from one point of view. We don't have the same mind stream. The different Buddhas have their own continuity of mind stream in one sense, conventionally speaking, but they do have the same power, but because of that individuality of their mind stream, they have different karmic connections. Sentient beings have different karmic connection with them. So there are some that will be enlightened by Oman, and Jan and Carl and Dan and Bonnie, even Carrie. Okay, even George.
And Mark, whoever he is.
And the mythical Mark. Actually, there is a Mark who took me a long time to get his name. I had to learn logical Mark, and now I've blown it by calling Frank Mark. All this time I thought he was Mark. Okay. So drive all blame onto one thing. This is a very famous idea in the training of the mind. It's sort of a way of condensing all of the practices. Put all of the blame on one thing and put all of the praise and the cherishing on one thing, sentient beings. Because here it says, drive all blame onto one thing. I shall cultivate gratitude toward all beings, take into my mind what others abhorred, and turn over the roots of virtue, the roots of my virtue to all beings. So cultivate gratitude to all beings because it is with respect to them, with independence upon them, that I will achieve enlightenment, all good qualities. That's how, without depending on sentient beings, there's no way to perfect generosity. If there's no recipients of your generosity. Without irritable or hard to get along people, there's no way to achieve patience. I bet Venerable is very, very lucky living in Dharamsala for that way, right? Yeah. Remember, I mentioned Atisha's cook many times, right? Atisha's cook, when the disciples said, why don't you get rid of this cook? He said, well, if I got rid of him, with whom would I practice patience? And then I mentioned also, it said in the scriptures that after some time, I think Geshe mentioned in his commentary, after knowing the Tibetans for some time, Atisha said, he sent the cook back to India, said, having met the Tibetans, I no longer need the cook. I love that. Anyway, okay. Drive all blames into one thing, cultivate gratitude toward all beings. So, seeing the defects of the self-cherishing thought, the benefits of cherishing others, so feel gratitude toward them. That's what you should feel. Recognizing the benefits of cherishing others. It's not just recognizing the benefits of cherishing them, but actually cherishing them, feeling gratitude toward them. Take into my mind what others abhorred, and turn over the roots of my virtue to all beings. So that's taking on suffering within my mind. Let the self-cherishing thought, what's the word? Marinate in that. What's the word? How would you say? Stew, yeah, stew it, yeah. Let you stew in that. Your mom ever tell you that? Now you stew. Now you made it, you stew in it or something like that. And so that's taking on the suffering, that's the lempa, taking on, and turning over the roots of my virtue to all beings. So when we do tongwa, when we when we perform giving, there's three main things that we give, right? Our body, that we hold so precious, our possessions, that are also very dear to us, and even our roots of virtue, that we might think of ourselves as a spiritual being. My body doesn't matter, my possessions doesn't matter, but my virtues I need, How am I going to achieve enlightenment without my virtues? Even your virtues, imagine giving up. Imagine that. Even to give up your virtues, and of your virtues, that means the ones you have now. What about your future virtues? Your merits, we say. It said to give the merits of the 3 times: your past merits, your present merits, and your future merits. In the past merits, I don't think it means merits that have already ripened. That's not the meaning. It means merits that you've created in the past that are still potent, merits that you're creating now, and merits that you are yet to create, even consigning them now. Like, say, for instance, someone who's going to make money in the future. Say you have to pay child support or something, and say, I'm going to devote that money, even though I haven't made it yet, already dedicated it, that future money, to my child's education or something like that. So dedicate even your future merit, all your future virtues, to sentient beings. Does that make sense? 96. Just as the pattern of colors in a peacock's feather is due to poison, may the afflictions be transformed into the aids of enlightenment by my taking on the physical, verbal, and mental deeds of other living beings, past, present, and future. I think it means the negative physical, verbal, and mental deeds of other sentient beings, past, present, and future. What does that mean? The pattern of colors in a peacock's feather is due to poison? Is that right? Maybe who's a person who studies animals like that? What's it called? Botanist or no, biologist? Zoologist, not a botanist. Botanist is something.
That was the poison.
That was the poison from the plants. That's the botanist. So there is a legend that it says here, just as the pattern of colors in the peacock's feathers due to poison, the implication is that's supposedly the reason that the peacock has this beautiful color, that it transmutes the poison. Whether that's true in fact or not, I don't know. But it's just an analogy. It's meant to reflect how, in fact, bodhisattvas do prosper, that by taking on the poison, living in the poison grove. Like if you go back and read the text again now, when we finish the course, and reviewing for practice day and examination, go back, I think it will make a lot more sense, a lot of the things that we talked about before. The like the peacock that supposedly can thrive in a poison grove, where other animals would be imperiled, where they would die, the bodhisattva can be in the city, in the marketplace, in Rome, in New York, Washington, in Santa Cruz, where all sorts of chaotic things are happening, and ordinary beings find difficulty to keep their minds controlled. And we fall prey to attachment and anger and so forth. The bodhisattva can actually thrive in that environment. In the case, even in extreme situations like war or tragedy or famine, the bodhisattvas can actually thrive in that situation. And it even mentioned in the text how the bodhisattva is able to even use through tantric means, even the delusions within their own continuum, not only the outer conditions, the ripening of their karma, but even the ripening of the habitual effect, like say anger or attachment. In Tantra, it's possible to transform desire into the path. Remember, we talked a little bit, and it's in the Yamantaka Tantra, supposedly it's possible to transform wrath, the wrathful energy, you transform that into like the wrathful aspect of Yamantaka, angry not at yourself or someone else, but angry at the self-cherishing thought, angry at the self-grasping, wrathful, not angry, wrathful, wanting to destroy that. So, just as the pattern of colors in a peacock's feather is due to poison, may the poisonous afflictions be transformed into aids to enlightenment by my taking on the physical, verbal, and mental deeds of other beings, past, present, and future. Here again, another way of thinking about how to transform the adverse conditions into the path. Adverse conditions like the poisons. There's a way the peacocks supposedly consume that poison and transform it within their bodies. In the same way, we have to think of how the bodhisattvas have to learn all of the methods that the bodhisattvas use to transform adverse conditions into the path, to something, not just so they're bearable, so you can just sort of, okay, I can bear with this, but actually to enhance and make one, like the peacock, even more glorious in the sense of developing spiritual qualities by putting the suffering on the self-cherishing thought, causing it to be destroyed over time, to erode in a sense, and to start to recognize the disadvantages of that, to start to cultivate cherishing others. Here it says, taking on the physical, verbal, and mental deeds of other living beings, past, present, and future. Again, this is like the of Tonglen, taking on, imagining, taking on the suffering of others. 97. I give the roots of my virtue to living beings so that they may be cured, as a poisoned crow is healed by medicine. I dedicate my life to the liberation of all beings so that they may quickly achieve Buddhahood of the Sugata, the one well gone. Do you remember that now? Sugata? Who is gone, well gone. I give my roots of virtue to living beings so that they may be cured, just as a poisoned crow is healed by medicine. How can you do that? Can your roots of virtue actually, it said, I've mentioned this verse many times to you, the Buddha said, the Buddha cannot take away your suffering or wash away your sins or transfer realizations. It shows the way. What's it talking about here? That if the Buddha can't do it, you can do it?
Yeah, what's with that?
Yeah. The Buddha can't do it, but you can do it? I give my roots of virtue to living beings. Here, Mark, Frank. Yeah, here's my roots of virtue. What does that mean? When one dedicates one's roots of virtue, dedicate them to others. Just like when we dedicate our virtue, right? We dedicate our merits. Does that mean, if we dedicate our merits, that others find happiness? Does that mean that somehow our merit can ripen on their continuum? is it possible that the karma that Venerable Rita creates in all of her virtuous activities in Dharamsala, that her coming around and I asking, petitioning her, that it could ripen on me? Somehow, her good reputation, her realizations, all of the virtues she creates, can I kind of, by petitioning her and maybe, reminding her about Tonglen, give me some, that can ripen on me? Then suddenly I'm sort of, I'm like filled up again. No, you can't transfer karma from one mind stream to another like that. But you can, by dedicating it, you can bring about that event that you are praying for, that you are dedicating it for. Because how can that happen? How can it realistically happen that due to this virtue, may all sentient beings find happiness? How can that happen? If you really sincerely pray, your personality will be such that you will bring happiness to others due to that virtue. You will start to develop good qualities and kindness, kind heart, and bring happiness to others. By achieving Buddhahood, you will actually bring about the fulfillment of those prayers to eliminate the suffering of other minds, other beings, mind streams, by leading them out of that suffering. Does that make sense to you? You look dubious.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I was waiting for
And more, okay. It's not enough. Come on, a little bit more.
like how do you...
When we do Tonglen, it is said that when you have a karmic connection with another being, that you have created virtue in unison with them in previous lives or in the past, it is possible that in some cases you can actually experience some suffering that they're about to experience, but that's quite rare. That's not the usual case. One of the great Lanrim lineage gurus, who was it? I can't remember. Maybe it was Dharma Rakshita, I can't remember. I think Dharma Rakshita, actually, it says in some of the prayers, there was a dog was running, and someone threw a stone, and the dog, it hit the haunch of the dog, and instead of the dog yelping, the guru went, oh, and fell down off the throne, and people said, oh, come on, yeah, right, you took on his suffering, and he pulled up his lower garment and showed them a big bruise on his thigh. I remember thinking about that once at Kopan. I remember probably my mind is not any more any less wild than it was then, but I remember thinking how clever I was. I saw a dog running around the hill at Kopan, and I sort of thought where it would be in the future, and I threw this stone down in it, and it hit it. I think it was a clod of mud or something, but still, I remember it yelping. And you can imagine what that would be like if you get hit by that. I'm sure that I'm going to be, that wheel of sharp weapons is just waiting to come back to me sometime, very soon.
You were trying to practice?
It was like, just like not recognizing the suffering of other beings, and just, kind of like when you're playing football, you're trying to lead the, except in this case, it's a malicious mind, So it is possible in some cases to actually experience the suffering of others and perhaps cause some of your merits to prevent their obstacles. I think I told you the story of Khepji Serkun Rinpoche doing Tonglen when His Holiness was flying to Zurich or to Geneva one time, and his flight, the police, the army, or whatever it's called, the government told him that they wouldn't be able to provide the bodyguards because Yasser Arafat was about to come in. And then Rinpoche meditated Tonglen with another Geshe just before he passed away. The evening when he passed away that evening. And the next morning we found out that the Yasser Arafat's flight had been diverted at the last minute, and there were people to guard His Holiness. This was at a time when there were a lot of fears of different kinds of plots on his life and everything. Let's go a little bit further here. 98. Until I and those who have been my parents have attained enlightenment in the highest realm, may we support each other with a single thought, even when wandering about in the 6 states of existence owing to our actions. Here, where he translates the highest realm, this is what Tibetan we say, ogmin. Do you know what that is, Venerable, in Sanskrit? Ogmin? Not ugen. What did I say? Ogmin. Ogmin is what we say, akanista. And it's said that when one attains enlightenment, actual enlightenment, not just liberation, that one attains enlightenment in that pure realm that you have created due to the accumulation of merit as a bodhisattva that you've created, or say as a tantric bodhisattva. And that pure realm is called the highest pure realm. Ogmin in Tibetan we say akanista. Literally it means not low. Ogmin, that which is not low. It means there's nothing above it. So here it's translated in the positive sense. It's actually, the word is actually akanista, sort of negative sense, not low, not lower. Do we have something like that in say?
Nothing lower than?
No, nothing higher than. But maybe, but here the word is not low. But I don't know if we have something similar in English. Heaven, does that have that word?
I think it has that connotation.
No, but I mean that particular combination of thoughts, not low. So anyway, that this is talking about until we attain enlightenment, because when we attain enlightenment, the bodhisattva, for all of the period of time that they are practicing the perfections, one of the reasons they're achieving merit is to create a pure land, not just so they can enjoy, so like saving up for your Hawaiian, condominium or something like that. The Bodhisattva's special pure land where they can really take it easy. But this is a place where they will achieve enlightenment, and within which living beings that have a karmic connection with them can take rebirth. All of the pure lands are like that. The pure land of Amitabha, what's it called? Sukhavati, right? Dewa Chen. Tushita also. They're different pure lands. Some pure lands are, Akanista is a pure land of the Sambhogakaya aspect. When we achieve enlightenment, we have a enjoyment body, or utility body, body of complete enjoyment. And in that Akanista pure land, that emanation only teaches Arya Bodhisattvas, not even ordinary Bodhisattvas, only Arya Bodhisattvas. And there are 10 qualities that the Sambhogakaya always has, constantly teaching the Mahayana till samsara ends, and only teaching the Mahayana doctrine, and so forth and so on. You can study. There are other pure lands that are not called Akanista that are still pure lands, but the highest pure land is one in which, at the achievement of enlightenment, the Sambhogakaya then emanates Nirmanakaya aspects also to having their own pure lands. I think Tushita heaven is a Nirmanakaya aspect. The what's it? I forgot the name of the Bodhisattva when he was who became Shakyamuni. We just had in this course. Do you remember what he was called in Tushita heaven? Something Ketu. Svetaketu. Svetaketu was the name of the Bodhisattva as he handed on the crown to Maitreya. And then when he came to earth, he was first called Siddhartha when he fulfilled his father's wishes. He who fulfills all wishes. And then he was called Shakyamuni when he sat under the tree and the shadow didn't move even as a little boy. And he was the Muni, the sage of the Shakya clan. And had different names at different times. So here it's when it's referring to that highest realm, it's referring to Ogmin or Akanista. 1 minute? Oh my gracious, you forgot. When I enter the 3 wretched states of existence for the sake of even one living being, may I save him or her from the suffering of that wretched destiny without compromising a great being's way of life. At that very instant, 100, the guards of hell will realize that I am a guru and their weapons will turn into a rain of flowers. May peace flourish unharmed. And finally, 101, I say finally because the next verses start to talk about emptiness. Even those in wretched states of existence shall obtain super knowledge in mantras, assume the bodies of gods and men, generate bodhicitta. In return for my kindness, may they repay me with dharma practice, not with, what do you call it, filthy sucre. What was it called? Lucre. Filthy lucre. Taking me as their guru, may they properly attend me. So next time we're going to continue. We'll just go over the last two verses briefly and then finish the final verses, which are talking about emptiness, the ultimate bodhicitta. So let's just do quickly a brief dedication. So like the dedication of the Bodhisattva, dedicating the roots of virtue of the 3 times, those merits that I've created in the past, those that I've created this evening, and those that I will create in the future. Due to these merits, may all living beings experience the bliss of uncontaminated happiness of Buddhahood through the agency of my achieving enlightenment. In fact, even if you just dedicate to the happiness of sentient beings, as there are said to be hundreds of thousands, millions of different kinds of dedications, merely dedicating it to the happiness of others, the only way that that karma can bring that about is that you yourself, ripening on your continuum, that virtuous karma will impel you to bring about the happiness of others by teaching them, by giving generously to them, by being ethical and restraining from harming them and so forth. Due to these merits, may all living beings experience uncontaminated happiness of enlightenment. And seal the dedication with the meditation on the emptiness of the 3 spheres. The merits that we've created are empty of true existence. Although they appear as existing from their own sides, conceptually when we think about them, if we analyze, we can't find the merits deposited in our consciousness anywhere. They're merely imputed to some efficacy, some dependent arising. The uncontaminated happiness, a state of uncontaminated happiness of all sentient beings that we dedicate to, can't be found. The sentient beings that are the recipients of it, or let's say no longer sentient, having achieved enlightenment with uncontaminated happiness, the beings that have achieved that can't be found, they're merely imputed. Even the happiness is the state of happiness. The mental factor, bliss, can't be found. It merely exists imputed to a state which has arisen because of causes and conditions. And the act of dedication, also merely imputed, doesn't exist. Dedication doesn't exist as our mind might think, oh, I made strong dedication. Doesn't exist inherently from its own side, can't be found anywhere as our mind ordinarily grasps it to be found. Letting go of your own ego, the dedicator, the act of dedication, the merits, even the anticipation of the goal, seeing it as all empty, but still functioning. No contradiction between the conventional reality of the law of cause and effect, the infallibility of the law of cause and effect, and the ultimate truth of emptiness. Seeing them as complementary and not contradictory.